When people can't place you in their social hierarchy, they can get really upset with themselves and upset at you. And I've experienced this many times in my life, and every single time I was baffled because I didn't understand what was going on. At the end of the day, we're just two human beings. We're connecting, we're talking to each other, and it should happen on a soul-to-soul connection, right? We just have a human experience together. Like, what's the big deal? But the truth is that most people need social hierarchies to find their own place. And when you show up and you are this enigma, this person who doesn't fit into one box because maybe you could be very popular, but you don't care about it, or you're really smart, but you don't lead with it, or you work a very high demanding corporate job, but at the end of the day, you're not a workaholic, you're rather chill. People don't know where to place you. And when they don't know where to place you, they don't know how to interpret themselves in comparison to you. And at the end of the day, this leads to a loss of control. And this can happen on a very conscious level, but most of the time it happens on a subconscious level. And if we're the person who can't be placed, we can cause a lot of pain to ourselves if we're not willing to face the truth, understand that this is just part of most people's lives, and that although we shouldn't judge it, we should never allow other people to make us feel less than, because they're not able to really interpret us as another human being who's having a connection with them. So today we're talking about why this is happening, how to take charge of that situation, and to understand that at the end of the day, you will never ever get out of that situation, and you'll repeat this pattern until you actually create dominance in your own world for yourself. When you say, this is a non-negotiable, this is who I am, take it or leave it. Before we get started, I want to remind you, if you haven't done this so far, to download the poster on the 5 pillars to an epic life. And if you want to take it to the next level, then join our INFJ Epic Life Bootcamp. We have our next live call on INFJ Prosperity this Saturday, August 30th. So join the hundreds of INFJs who create their INFJ Epic Life together. I see you there. Everything you need to know you can find through the links in the description. So let's back it up. Why are we even talking about this? Haven't we gotten to a place where we know, okay, we don't really care what people think of us, and we live in this society where everybody's doing their own thing, and we're not going to get bullied, and we're beyond all of that? Theoretically, yes, but this one aspect that we're talking about today is something that is happening on such an autopilot. It is so foreign to people like us who don't like hierarchies, who don't understand hierarchies, who don't think in hierarchies, that when we meet a person like this, we are really baffled and we start looking for the fault in ourselves, although this is not the place we should start with. Like, I understand that at the end of the day, we want to know if we did something wrong, if we offended somebody. And if it's that easy for you to say something like, yeah, they're just superficial and I just don't care, and you move on, great. But we're not talking about those situations. I can do this with most people. But from time to time in my life, I've met people where I felt I had a connection with them. We had something in common. Maybe it's even somebody who's been in your life for a long time. And then you reveal one aspect of yourself that doesn't allow that person to see you the way they used to see you, or the way they wanted to see you. Every human being has some kind of projection going on. If we want it or not, if we're conscious about it or not, of course we can take charge of it, but there's always something happening in the background. We size up people in milliseconds sometimes, and it's not something we can consciously choose. And most people live in hierarchies. That's really how their brain is wired. And without judgment, we just have to understand it and accept it, and not wait for the other person to see it from our perspective, because that's what I did most of the time. So I've been in situations where I met somebody and then on some level I beat them somehow. I was maybe more independent, or I didn't care what the boss thought of me, or, we played some kind of social game and it was just a game for me. And, I played that person because we were just playing around, and I just won in that moment. I've been in these situations and I always thought, what's the big deal? We're just playing around. Why is this now a reason for you to either completely dismiss me, try to bully me, or put me down? Like, what has happened? What is the big problem here? And very often I try to connect with the other person on a level of, why are you so insecure? Why are you trying to beat me? Why are you trying to size me up? Why are you trying to put me in a box so you have control of the situation? I'm not a threat to you. But the truth is, you are a threat to this person. We just have to understand it. This doesn't mean that we're bad people or that we have bad intentions, but it's the way we can go through life and not have the need to either fit into some social box ourselves, nor to size up other people that way. And this is not the norm. Hopefully, this will become more and more the norm, but we also have to take into consideration that most people are just wired differently, and that's okay. But if you look at it from that perspective, you will stop trying to connect with this person on a human level. You can try this once. You can say, no matter what we do here, even if we try to manipulate each other or not, hopefully not, at the end of the day, we're just two human souls and we could connect right now and talk honestly with each other. This cannot happen for most people who haven't healed. And most people are unhealed. We're carrying generations of trauma with us, things have happened in the past, whatever it may be, that is not the norm. And for you to try to heal another person by being as vulnerable as you can be, as authentic as you can be, isn't going to work if it didn't work the first time. So yes, you can try to connect with a person on, a human level. Please do so. I do this myself. But when you try to do this once and you try to do this the second time and the person doesn't budge, or they actually start acting like somebody who's, not willing to see things from your perspective at all, then please change your tactic. And I've seen established people do this to me who are in their 60s. This is not something everybody grows out of. It's just how most of society works. But I'm also not here to tell you to kind of give up on society and say, oh, okay, now that's really bad. And most people are not able to have true connections. No, I don't think so. I think most people actually do have the capacity for that. But if you're somebody who is this enigma, if you're somebody like me who just doesn't fit into a box, and I've never fit into any box, and even if I tried, I couldn't be that. I could pretend to, but that's not who I am. I have found that people either have to accept me the way I am and not put me in a box, which will inevitably cause them to think in terms of there are no boxes. Because think about it like this. It is enough to have one person in your life who doesn't fit into a scheme for the entire scheme not to work. So if you can size up every single person in your life based on a hierarchy, okay, that's the big boss. We all are looking up to that person. That is the popular girl over there. Everybody thinks she has a great life and everybody wants to be friends with her. If you have only people like this in your life, positively or negatively, maybe there's even people that you put down unconsciously because you think, okay, those are the people who are just not getting ahead in life and nobody likes them. If you think in terms of this, even if you think of yourself as somebody who's very developed and is, a people person on whatever it may be, and then somebody comes along who doesn't fit that mold, it's enough to make it all crumble. Because that's the moment when you understand that all of it was just something you made up in your mind. We all are making up reality in our mind. When it comes to perception of reality, there isn't this ultimate truth. I know there are people who believe that, but I also think that they really look at it from the perspective of, well, this is a house. We're not going to say this is a teddy bear. This is a house. This is a fact. This is a house. This is not a teddy bear. When you think of it from that perspective, yeah, I think most of us can come to terms with that. This is a house and it's not a teddy bear. But what I'm talking about is really your own perception of how you experience reality, how you experience yourself in comparison to other people. And this is always subjective, based on so many factors, based on how other people treat you, what people you're around, what kind of circumstances you're in. And this is always something we can change by either removing ourselves or setting new boundaries, showing up in a different way. And I think it's incredibly important to have those conversations, because if we think that we're the only ones who are experiencing this, we will start doubting ourselves and give the other person the benefit of the doubt. I think every single time I've been in situations like this where I've had some kind of connection with a person and then it broke off because of exactly something like this in any kind of way, every single time I thought, maybe I did something wrong. What's going on? This is a good person. This is a kind person. Yeah, they may be a little insecure. That's why they're acting this way. Maybe I'm triggering something in them. I'm mirroring something back to them that they don't like about themselves, whatever it may be. That's how most of us are thinking, right? But I always kind of looked at it from the perspective of that's not a bad person. And I'm still not at a place where I'm going to say this is a bad person. But what I am going to say is this is rude behavior. I'm not going to entertain this at all. I'm cutting this person off. So somebody wrote me a couple of months ago that I hadn't talked to for like probably a decade or so. And now they saw, okay, I was successful. I had a family, I had everything going on. And then they just didn't reply anymore. And I was like, hey, what are you doing? What are you up to? And that person just completely cut me off. And yes, of course, I know that the reason for this is happening because back then I hadn't achieved all of those things. I knew I had the capacity for it, but they sort of saw us at like the same level. And now I have surpassed them and they couldn't handle it. I know that this is the reason. There's no other reason. We were friendly towards each other. I was not bragging. There was no reason to act like this at all. That's a person I completely cut off. I unfollowed them. I removed them from my following list. I, cut everything off because this is just something that nowadays I'm just not going to accept. But still, this is not something that's comfortable. This is not a nice feeling because at the end of the day, I'm talking to another human being. I am talking to this person in a very kind manner. I talk to them on eye level, and all I'm asking is for the same kind of respect back. That's all. I'm not asking for that person to admire me. I'm not asking for that person to compliment me. Nothing. Just very basic human decency. And if you're not getting that back, you have to stop looking at what you have done wrong. This is a phenomenon that nowadays people speak more and more about. I've, seen people talk about it on TikTok already, which, I love because TikTok is pretty much like the first place where people start talking about things before, YouTube picks it up, before it becomes like this thing that everybody talks about. And this is one of those things that I feel we haven't talked about enough, but it's something that so many of us experience. Because in those situations, it feels like something is just wrong. This is not how it's supposed to be. This is an adult person. We're not teenagers anymore. We're not in a position where, I wasn't ever flirting to that person. This was never a situation where there was any kind of romantic thing going on. It was just a person I knew from many years ago, and they sort of just knew me a little bit detached, but still we knew each other. So that person acting this way was just ridiculous. And again, I've also experienced this with family members. I've experienced this with acquaintances. I've experienced this with people that I thought are established at their job, that are, let's say in their 60s. So this is not something where I can say, oh, this is only happening in this certain scenario. And of course, I'm not saying like family members cut me off or that person who's established stopped talking to me. But there were reactions where you felt like that person can't put you into a box. You don't fit in there. Because even if another person would see you and would say, oh, you're like this really popular, successful person, then they would expect you to act in a way of, yeah, I'm the big boss here and, you have to kind of like bow down to me and this is how it's going to work. If you are not acting in this way because you don't think in hierarchies, it's very difficult for a person who thinks in hierarchies and who is not able to sort of like deal with people on a one-to-one level and, look beyond those hierarchy things to really, deal with you. And I'm not saying that this is how it's supposed to be because I'm convinced if you're healed to some extent, you're open to other people's perception of reality or how they deal with other people. So it's also on me as somebody who doesn't think in hierarchies to have some kind of understanding and some kind of compassion and make compromises for people who do think in hierarchies and make it a little bit easier for them to grasp who I am. Because for the longest time, I was somebody who didn't want to reveal anything about me. I didn't want to reveal my achievements. I didn't want to reveal, my interests. I didn't want to reveal so much of me because it was so diverse. It was so unique that it made it hard for other people to kind of like pinpoint me down. And nowadays I have learned, okay, I first have to, be more of who I am, like not be ashamed of the fact that I'm good at this, this, and this, but not this, and that I don't belong to this group, but I'm more over here, and that it's a mixture of all, and that a person like me wouldn't be the typical person you would see in a typical Hollywood movie or comedy or anything like this, right? And so there's a price to be paid there, because once I understood that this is the way I have to act, because this is how I feel most like myself, a lot of my relationships changed, because then I just didn't fit into any box. I didn't fit into a mold, and for a lot of people that meant they're going to back off from me. But it turned out that this isn't actually a big problem. We just have to face it first, because the biggest fear in that moment is I'm going to be all alone. Because that's how it felt like. If you are all that you are and you don't fit into any mold or into any group or into any, predefined identity, most people will take a step back, even if they do this on a subconscious level. But once, this new way of living has established itself, people actually come closer to you. But there is this in-between period. And this is something we have to be willing to face. And to understand that if people act this way, this is not something you can ever change by making yourself less visible, by dimming your light, or by only showing up in a way that is acceptable to the other person. So I've done this in the past where I knew, okay, that person is, let's say, in a certain scene. So I'm just going to show up as that version of myself that fits into that scene. And other parts of my personality, I'm just going to live out, with other people or in other scenarios and whatever it may be. Of course, you're going to connect with people who you share some hobbies with differently than with others. But there's a part of us that we have to understand is not up for debate. And just because I don't talk to you about it every single day, I'm not going to hide it. So when I, for example, started this channel, a lot of people had a new understanding of who I was, and they either accepted this or they moved out of my way. Some people thought, oh, she's really weird, or they thought it was embarrassing. Other people didn't care at all. No matter what it is, it's a price we have to be willing to pay. And at the same time, understand that it's just going to be part of everyday life for people to react this way to you as long as you haven't showed up completely as you are, or if you're in that transition period. So that person I just talked to you about that, did this a couple of months ago, this was somebody I hadn't seen or talked to for over 10 years. If I meet people now, this doesn't happen because I have established this is who I am. I'm not hiding certain aspects of me. And by definition, it's not going to surprise anybody. So those situations where you have these reactions, they happen because you've hidden most of who you are and then you revealed another part of yourself, or they've always thought of you a certain way and then they see, oh, you're this as well. But the more you live out who you are, the less you're going to get into situations like this. It's not like you can avoid it altogether, but when people meet you and they directly sense that you don't fit into that mold, they can make a decision for themselves if this is somebody they want to socially interact with or not. Even if it's somebody at work, you can have a relationship with a coworker or a boss that's very professional, where you do all your tasks, but it doesn't go further than this. There's no connection where you become friends or where you feel like there's this social dynamic of, oh, I'm looking up to you in a psychological way. We've seen this very often where people are really trying to impress their boss. And this is not only from a level of, oh, I'm presenting really good work, but they want the boss to think of them as, somebody who's like the next protege, because it really gives them this feeling of, oh, I am somebody. But if you are leaning more into, well, I don't fit the mold. And thankfully, we live in a society now where the mold is, becoming less and less. Like individualism is becoming more prominent. I think the internet has a lot to do with it because you just see so many different things. It's not like 30 or 40 years ago where there were, 5 channels on TV and then, this is what everybody was watching and you either fit into this mold or you don't. There's just so many opportunities. Some people are gamers, other people are intellectuals. There's just so much, and that's a good thing. But what I've learned is that every single time I get into situations like this, that I just stop giving the other person the benefit of the doubt and give myself the benefit of the doubt. So yes, I ask myself, did I do something to offend the person? And if there isn't something that comes to mind directly, and even if you did a small mistake and you sort of try to clear it up, and the other person is still acting in a way that is disrespectful, stop giving the other person the benefit of the doubt. It does not matter if the person has gone through trauma. It doesn't matter if the person is insecure. It doesn't matter if they've been conditioned to think in hierarchies. You deserve to be treated with respect. And if somebody doesn't do this because you don't fit into their mold of what they think is an acceptable way of being, then it's not on you to change. It's on you to say, well, that's who I am. I'm not hurting anybody. I'm not doing anything illegal. And I'm not going to pretend I'm somebody I'm not because you are not able to accept yourself. And through that, you're actually becoming a blueprint of what it means to choose yourself. And you'll be surprised how many people actually turn around without even realizing it sometimes, maybe years later, because you have not given up on who you are. You have not decided that being yourself is not an option, and the only way to go through life is to fit into some kind of scheme. Our self-worth is not dependent on where you fit into some social ladder system, and it's not defined by what a specific person thinks of you. So are you going towards the things that matter to you? Are you becoming more of the person that you want to be? Are you showing up for yourself, for your loved ones, and in a way that is beneficial to everybody around you, starting with you? This is in no way about being perfect. We all know we will never be perfect. And it's also not about creating some new hierarchy game where you're at the top. Most people who watch my videos don't care about these things. I definitely don't. But the point is, though, to know, okay, I am taking charge of my life and I'm not embarrassed about the person that I am. I don't have to fit a mold, and I'm good the way I am, and I bring value by being myself. And this is what the entire message is of what I'm doing here. And yes, there are people who have the need to put you in some kind of box. And yes, we can have understanding for that and compassion, but not at the price of being disrespected. And when you do that and you don't back off and you say, no matter what, I'm doing my thing, then people have no choice but to accept the fact that you exist the way you are, and that you're not moldable, and that you're not going to change because your existence makes somebody uncomfortable. They have to deal with the fact that you're a human being on this earth like everybody else, and it's on them to grow through that. But they're never going to grow and heal and accept you and themselves if you're not willing to stand up for yourself and stop making excuses for the other person of why they act this way, or that it's in their nature, or that you have done something wrong and you should sort of fit into some kind of system. Systems are made up things, and we can decide what system we live in, and we live in a system where we are is just the way it's supposed to be. Remember, if you want to dive deeper into creating your epic life, then first download the free poster on the 5 pillars to an epic life. And if you want to take it to the next level, then join the hundreds of INFJs in the INFJ Epic Life Bootcamp. Our next live call will be August 30th on the topic of INFJ prosperity. Everything you need to know in order to join us, you can find through the links in the description. And if you want to watch another video now that is in alignment with today's topic, then check out the video you see on the screen right now. I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys.